Why are people in other streams being so upset that it's OP for evokers? It's literally not for us though. Like, we use the weapon, but it's for you. This just goes to show how everyone gets mad if they don't get a legendary. They're like, wow, I can't believe in the evoker expansion we would give evoker a legendary after we kill an evoker boss. That's crazy. After we go to the place where evokers were made and the evokers have all their craziest equipment. It is insane that that place would have an evoker legendary. How dare you? Yeah, I mean, this is the evoker expansion. Get with the times, old man. Should I just start the rant from scratch? Should I start from the opener? I feel like this might be a good opportunity for me to clip it too and put it on YouTube. Hold on, let's do the rant. Say hi to YouTube. All right, so it looks like we have a new evoker legendary, or at least whispers of a new evoker legendary coming in 10.1. There's a lot of information here, but I want to talk about what we know, and then also what my speculation is. So we're going to start with the very, very basics here. There is a lot in the game files that's indicating that we are getting a legendary for Devastation Evoker, and also Preservation obviously gets it too, but we care more about Devastation, right? There's an item in the lore called an Oath Binder, okay? And apparently this has to do with Neltharion and, you know, controlling the Draktyr, and basically there's been a ton of references to a Draktyr legendary in the game files that have been data mined. So all of these that you're seeing here, these are references to something called a Draktyr legendary. We don't know what it is because it's encrypted, but what we know is that there's a bunch of quests related to it. There's also profession recipes, and there's also some scenarios as well. Now, with every legendary item, there's kind of something that ties it back into the story, right? There's like, maybe there's an important lore character that had it, right? Or there's quests that are circling around it. But the biggest thing that indicates that we're going to be getting an evoker legendary is this line right here. It's not actually in game. This is just something that Ian Hazzikostas said in the EU content creator interview. Basically, someone was asking about the evoker staff. They were asking if there's a plan to standardize these kinds of items, right? Moving forward. And Ian Hazzikostas said no, but, and he said, you're going to be interested as evokers in what Commander Sarkhet has for you, okay? So this is a very ominous line, right? He's telling us that we're going to be interested in some item. We don't know what the item is. And to this day, we still do not know. And it's not going to be the weapon, I don't think, because it's not specific to us. It's not going to be the cloak. This also isn't specific to us. Obviously, the cloak is interesting. It's got a unique flair to it, but it doesn't seem to be related just to evoker. So the question is, okay, well, what is it then, right? Now, if we look at the actual lore of this, and warning, there are some possible spoilers here, but basically there is a Titan artifact that the last boss of the next raid has, okay? And after the fight is done, we actually find the item on the ground. It's broken shortly after the fight, but it can only be assumed that this item that is on the ground is somehow maybe looted, or maybe it starts a quest line, and obviously it's broken, right? So this kind of ties into the professions. If there's this whole quest line and there's all these scenarios and there's all these profession recipes that are encrypted, it's kind of weird that they're being so hush-hush about this, right? But it kind of lines up. You've got jewel crafting, you've got engineering, you've got blacksmithing, right? I'm assuming that all of these work together. You probably make the components to fix it, and then you repurpose this item as an evoker legendary. Okay, there's also this. This is very interesting. So there's 3 encrypted spell empower stages. Basically, it's like there's a new empower spell that we don't know what it is, and it has stages to it, just like Fire Breath does in Eternity Surge. And we don't know it's encrypted, but we know that it has something to do with a map ID called the Maelstrom. Okay, so the encrypted ID is 14706. It has to do with the Maelstrom, and it has to do with Deathwing's final moment. So we can only assume that this is either an empower that you get from the weapon, or it could be just part of the quest line. Like maybe it's just an ability you use once during the quest and then you don't use it again, right? Either way though, we know it somehow relates to this scenario, and we know this scenario is new in the patch and it's encrypted, and it probably has to do with this item, right? And then it has more in here about a quest line. We know that we go to a scenario map called the Maelstrom, and there's something that has to do with Deathwing's final moment. All of this is lining up. It all relates to Neltharion, so it all ties into the story. The whole reason why Sarkhet went down there is to basically find the legacy of the Draktyr, right? To steal whatever it was that Neltharion was using. And obviously he uses the Oathbinder in the fight, and then after the fight, it's very obvious that it is broken, right? And that it's just laying on the ground. It's basically just begging us to speculate about what we do with this thing. So it's not all the way confirmed, obviously, but I would say that I'm about 99% sure that this is going to be a thing. Obviously not confirmed still though. Just want to be clear. And then there is another part of it. So there's a leak image that's been floating around in Discord. This I'm not as sure about. Okay, so Basically what this item does, or what it alleges to do, is that it gives us like a buff where we just, we have like these orbs that give people secondary stat. It's a fist weapon, and it's 457 item level. All of this kind of makes sense for it to be basically the fist weapon, right? Like the crafted fist weapon. The reason why I'm not really buying this is because the kerning on the numbers is a little weird. Also, I'm not sure if this effect seems all that interesting. We don't really know where this is from. We can't really trust this. It's also very easy to fabricate stuff like this. You can basically just make up like your own items in Wowhead, and you can even take the item once you've made it up. If you click the in-game link and then you paste it in the chat, you can actually open up the item in-game and get like a fake, right? So it's very easy to basically fake these items if you want. If you look at the pixels here, you'll notice that these are exactly the same. That's not a coincidence. But then if you look at the item here, it isn't matching, right? These match perfectly. This one, not so much. This isn't quite lining up. I don't know, man. I don't know. Looks awfully fishy to me. That's why I don't really trust this specific version of it, but I think that there's probably some truth in this. I think it's probably going to be 457. I think it's probably going to be a fist weapon. I could definitely see it having stats like this. I'm not sure if this is going to be the effect of it, right? I'm just not really buying it. But we'll have to wait and see, right? Like, we don't know. It's encrypted. We have to wait until, I'm assuming, someone kills this boss. That'll probably be the first time where we actually get the quest and can start doing it. But if I had to guess how this works, you probably go in the dungeon, you probably kill the boss, you get an item, you start a quest, and then that quest is going to have you do, a thing where you have to go and get all the 3 pieces of it. You're probably going to have to go collect items from raid bosses or Mythic Plus or something like that, right? There's probably going to be a whole process to it that's time gated, I would assume, based off of how these encrypted reagents work, right? 240 of one, 20 of another. It seems like this is all just, like, this is probably the final step, right? This is where you're putting everything together. But yeah, I'm assuming that once you have all of the reagents together and you do all the crafts and you probably put it all together, then you maybe do a scenario where you go back to the end of time, or maybe you go back to the death of Deathwing in the Maelstrom, and you take the pieces and you put them together, right? And then you probably create a fist weapon, and who knows what it actually does, but it's probably a legendary for us. And either way, I'm very excited for this. It seems like it's going to be this whole lore thing. It's very involved. And I'm interested in chat, like, what do y'all think about this item? Obviously, as evokers, we got to be pretty hyped that we're getting our legendary. It makes sense in an expansion that's focused on the evoker, right? Blizzard has stated multiple times that Dragonflight is the expansion. It's telling the story of the Draktyr. That's the whole point of this expansion. If there's ever going to be expansion where we get a legendary, it would be this expansion, right? Like, this is when we're going in. We're going into the vault with the guy who made us, who has all the secret technology, all the crazy shit. Like, we are going in there and we are collecting the best loot for our characters, right? Fighting an evoker boss. You're going into the evoker lab, right? And you're collecting an item that was used to control evokers, and then you're possibly doing quests with it, right? It all leads to being a legendary. Like, I'm almost completely convinced that this is a evoker legendary we're getting. So yeah, we're basically creating the Infinity Gauntlet. Yeah, exactly. So after we collect the Infinity Stones, we create it, and who knows what it actually does. But I think that we can all agree that it seems very plausible that this is an item, and either way, you should be hyped about this because it's pretty hype, right? Like, getting a legendary for your class is super hype. Loved getting my staff back in Firelands, right? Yeah, I don't know. This could also tie into the whole augmentation thing we keep hearing about too. Not really sure what that'll end up panning out to be, but we have voice lines from Neldarian kind of referencing augmentation. We've got obviously all the references to like a 3rd spec. They said that we're not getting one in this patch, right? But anything is possible in the future. I think that that's a pretty good indication that, like, it's probably not happening anytime soon if it is happening, right? But something like this could definitely tie into that same idea. So I don't know. I feel like this has to be somehow related to what Ian Hasekasa said about there being an item that Sarkat has that we'll be interested in, right? There's just no way this isn't related somehow. The question, of course, is what does it actually do, right? Is this the real thing? Or is this a fabrication? Is this maybe a previous version of it, right? Whenever they were first playing around with the idea and they don't really know what they actually want it to do, or maybe the effect has changed now, right? Like, we don't know. All we can do is just wait and see, right? We have to just wait and see what the item actually does. But either way, we're getting a legendary. I'm pretty much convinced, and I'm hyped about that. Obviously, getting a legendary is really exciting stuff. So yeah, even if it is a buffing allies effect, it's still a 457 item level weapon, and that's huge for us, right? Like, just having the increased item level is already pretty massive, right? So yeah, I don't know. super hyped about this. I think it's really, really awesome and intriguing. And I love a good mystery, you know? Love a good mystery. Love going through like data mine stuff and picking through and finding like any sorts of crumbs or hints or like, you know, basically making like conspiracy theories about how this stuff is going to work. Yeah, it's probably also going to be very expensive is another thing. So the materials, right? Like you can just see it right here. It takes 25 Awakened Order, 20 Shadowed Alloy, 50 Arclight Capacitors, 20 Elemental Harmony, 20 Illuminated Diamonds. You can only assume that this is going to be an expensive item to craft, right? But it'll probably be a good payoff whenever you get it in the end. And it does kind of remind me of Final Fantasy. Yeah, I mean, like in Final Fantasy, you craft your like super giga weapon, right? That was one of my favorite things about it. I played Realm Reborn when it first came out. And one of my favorite experiences in that game is how you do the quest to get your weapon. And you're just constantly working on improving your weapon through all the questing and stuff. And this to me kind of feels in a way similar. And I think that a lot of you could probably agree that Devastation in Dragonflight kind of feels like a class that belongs in another game. Like Devastation doesn't really feel like a World of Warcraft class, first and foremost. To me, it feels more like a Final Fantasy class, especially since it's slower. It's like a much slower class, and kind of in Final Fantasy, the action per minute's slower as well, right? It's just a very slow playstyle. The Empower spells are much different than what you normally do. It's all very interesting. Yeah. One more thing. So in the comment that Ian Hazakasas made about the items dropping off of Sarkat, he also just casually mentioned legendary weapons, right? Like he dropped Death's Whisper, he dropped Shadowmourne as like examples of iconic, powerful lore weapons, right? Saying that, you know, it needs to be an iconic weapon for it to be like that. And that to me is like the biggest hint, right? The fact that he was mentioning these legendaries right before he went on to talk about how we're going to be interested in something, teasing it, right? That to me just seems very, very, very coincidental, right? It's all very coincidental here. But if we look at historically, like legendary weapons, right? And the quest is that they're involved to like get the weapon. Usually there's all sorts of stuff, all sorts of errands they send you on where you have to go collect items. If you look at Firelands, you were having to do all sorts of raid clears, right? To get your legendary staff. And I suspect it'll probably be pretty similar now. But we'll have to see like how you actually collect these reagents, right? How many, 240, how many do you get per boss, right? Or what is this? Is it per dungeon? Is it per boss? Do you just get this from like digging holes, right? You just dig through dirt and you get this? Or is it something where you have to only clear boss on Mythic, right? I would be very surprised though if it was Mythic only. That seems like something they wouldn't do anymore. Like back in the day, they probably would do a Mythic only legendary, but I feel like they've moved past that, right? This is probably going to be available on all versions of the boss. And I suspect it will probably be an item that maybe the boss has not a guarantee to drop, right? Like it could just be like a rare drop from the boss, kind of similar to how like I have Sulphurous worked, or, you know, like the bindings, right? For Thunder Fury. I could definitely see it being kind of like a reference back to those things from Classic. They seem to be kind of pulling in some of those ideas from like way back when. So yeah, if I had to guess, I would say probably just a rare drop, probably has nothing to do with Mythic, but you probably get more reagents from doing Mythic, right? So it probably speeds up your acquisition of the item. You will note though that we're probably crafting a weapon like right away in the patch, right? Like, so as soon as we get the ability to, we're probably just going to immediately full send on a one-hander at 447. I don't think that's changing, even with this potential legendary weapon. Unless you can get it like first 2 weeks, I don't think you're going to do anything else, right? Because like the value of getting a 447 weapon is just so high that it's going to be probably still the best bang for your buck, even if you don't keep using it forever, right? There's no guarantee that we're getting a legendary right away. We have no idea how long it's going to take. We can't just assume that we're going to replace it right away. So probably err on the side of caution. Craft your weapon at 447 first, right? Make that your first spark that you spend, and then afterwards maybe you get the legendary and you replace it, right? But in that case, it's like it's whatever, no big deal. Looks like they built in such a way to not affect the world first race. Yes, yeah, I agree. It seems like it is a time gated thing, and obviously if it's time gated, it will not affect the world first race as much. But it means that for me in my guild, oh baby, you better bet, you best bet I'm gonna have this legendary by the time I kill this boss. I'm calling it right now. I'm going to kill Sarkat on Mythic with this weapon, okay? I'm just gonna, complete speculation, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. It's gonna happen, all right? I'm gonna be lucky. I'm gonna get the items I need, and the stars are gonna align, and I'm gonna have it, all right? It's gonna happen.